Okay, today we're going to be on lecture 22. Okay, we're on lecture 22. I'm not sure if it's in the right module. It's probably not. It's in module 10, lecture 22. And today we're going to finish up our Scrapy lecture. We didn't get quite finished. We're almost done. And then we're going to look at Scrapy with MongoDB. Now, for the challenge, if you've taken a look at it, you need to write a scraper. I recommend you use Scrapy, although you could use others. And it needs to connect to a database, which is what we're going to go over today. And essentially, what you're going to have is you're going to have a website. Okay, so you can imagine this is my website. It doesn't have to look fancy, it can be very basic. Essentially, you would click a button, it's going to run your scraper, and it's going to output the scraped results on your website. Now, the scraper, what it needs to do, and I can draw a small diagram here. Let me draw a small diagram. So I'm going to have a website here. And for some of the scrapers, you need parameters. So you could have a form. Okay, you have a form where they type, what do you want to search? Well, maybe for our brick set example, maybe they want to search, maybe they can search years. So they can say, I want to search 2019 or 2020, whatever the year is. They put a parameter, then they click go. Okay, then they click go. This go button will then tell the server to run your scraper. Okay, it's going to be Scrapy, hopefully, or it could be others, but I think Scrapy is probably the easiest. So it's going to run Scrapy, and then Scrapy is going to put the data. Okay, this is going to be the data. Scrapy is going to put the data into the database. This is going to be your workflow. So Scrapy is going to put the data into your DB. So I'm hoping you're going to use MongoDB because that's what's easiest for Scrapy. Although you could use others, you could use MongoDB. That would probably be the easiest. Okay, MongoDB. And then your website, essentially after this Scrapy is finished executing, then it's going to go here to the server. Okay, it's going to go to the server, or it's going to go to the database, I guess you could say, and it's going to update the content. So it's going to pull the content, database will return the content, and then you should display it here on the page. You can display it in a table. Okay, you can have a table here, or you can have divs. Okay, whatever you think looks the nicest, but it doesn't. I'm not really too worried about UI, although the UI shouldn't be too basic. You know, use material. A lot of students last time I taught the course, they used Angular here. This was Angular. Okay, this was Angular, and Angular connected to the server. Okay, so Angular made like a GET request or a POST request. It made a GET request to this Scrapy. Scrapy was in on the server, and Scrapy and this database. So this is all the server, and this could be this Python Scrapy can be ran with PHP. Some students used PHP; they felt more comfortable with it. Some students felt more comfortable with Node. So you can have Angular make a GET request because you already did the REST API. If you go back to my lecture, the REST API lecture, you can use that code. Essentially, Angular will make a GET request. It'll tell Scrapy to run with PHP or Node. Scrapy will run, put the data into MongoDB, and then Angular will then grab the data from MongoDB and then output it on the page. So this is kind of the system that I want you to build. Now, the most important part is this scraper here and putting it into MongoDB. Okay, putting it into MongoDB. These are the two requirements. These are the minimum requirements. Putting it on a page like this is, in the documents, I used to call it controlling your own destiny. If you make it where we can go to a website with a URL, so we go to your domain, so I go to professorwergeles.com and I go to /scraper. And then we can run it on your server. You're essentially, what's that? What did I say? You're creating your own destiny. Okay, you're creating your own destiny because this will ensure that your scraper runs correctly. If we need to, let's say you don't use Python Scrapy, let's say you use something else, and we need to download this on our server and then install your database and then try to run it and make sure it's working correctly, think how many problems can go wrong there. What if we don't have the right Scrapy version? What if we don't have the right MongoDB version? So by you making this little front end part, it doesn't have to be special, just a little button that tells Scrapy to run. Scrapy runs, puts it into the database, and Angular will update the page or whatever you're using, React, Angular, Vue, whatever you want to use, regular HTML and CSS, that's fine. But if you don't do this, we got to install this whole system here on our server, and there's so much that could go wrong there. Like I said, wrong versions. Who knows? Who knows what could go wrong? We're running Ubuntu 18. Some students were doing this on Ubuntu 16. So by making this front end, it will require just maybe 30 minutes extra work, but it'll ensure that you get the A and that there will be nothing wrong when the TAs are running your scraper. Okay, so that's why I recommend creating this little front end part for the scraper. Okay, that's my recommendation. You'll read it in the docs when you get that far. You probably read it already, but that's what I'm talking about in the docs. Okay, have a little website, click a button, runs the scraper, puts it in the database. Website goes to the database, pulls the data, and displays it in some fashion. That's what I'm looking for. Okay, we're on lecture 22. We're not there yet. We're going to finish up the previous lecture. So if you go up to your server, I'm using FileZilla. We were in our domain, ProfessorWorgley's.com. We were in our public HTML directory, and we were looking at Brickset Scraper. Okay, we're in Brickset Scraper, and we implemented scraper.py. I've uploaded the code to GitHub, but I just wanted to go ahead and finish it. There's a few extra things. We're almost done. We got this done last time to go through all the pages, and this is kind of where we finished up last time. There's just a little bit more code that I wanted you all to have that will really be helpful. Now, the scraper for the challenge, it has to be able to scrape at least one web page. And that website, or I guess I should say one website, and that website should have multiple web pages. Now, what do I mean by that? So here, I have brickset.com. If I go to it, okay, if I go to this on the browser, this is what we've been scraping. This is one website, but you'll see it has multiple pages here. Page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4. In addition, it has multiple years. Okay, it has multiple years. So we're gonna take a look at that today, how to scrape multiple years. But this is one website, and I'm going to multiple pages on this website. This is a minimum requirement. You shouldn't just scrape one page. You should scrape one website that has several pages, or in some cases, students would scrape multiple websites. Now that's a little bit harder because each website will have different selectors. So for example, here, every page will have the same selectors if I do an inspect. Okay, remember we were scraping this H1 to get the title? Okay, here's the title, but we found out we couldn't get that one, so we went up a little bit higher. And we could find the H1, I believe a little bit higher, this H1 right here, and we pulled the title. So this structure will be the same for this entire website. So I recommend to find a good website that has multiple pages like this. Okay, that has multiple pages like this. And that's a minimum requirement. Some students did multiple websites, but I think that's a little bit too difficult because you'll have to have different selectors for each. But I think it depends on what you're pulling. You know, if you're just pulling the title and an image, maybe multiple websites will be easy. But if you're trying to pull all this data here, then I recommend to try to stay on the same site. Now we wrote this code. Let's go ahead and check this code out. So you'll see here I'm looking for the next selector. So for the challenge, one of the requirements is you have to select multiple pages, at least on one website. So here's my one website, and here's my multiple pages. So if I come back and look, okay, we were actually on year 2020. I think it's pretty much all the same. The structure of the website's the same. They have the years up here, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to scrape one set at a time. So we're scraping all these sets. So it goes down, scrapes all the sets. And now I'm at the bottom of the page. So the easiest way to go to the next page would be down here. Now what you can do is you can actually select the next button. So if I click on this button, it goes to the next page. And then I'm going to scrape all of these sets. So what the easiest thing to do is look for this button, or look for a button at the website that you're scraping. So if I right click, do an inspect for this button, you'll see it has a class called next, and it has an A tag, and the A tag has a little forward arrow here, and the A tag goes to the next page, page 1, page 2, page 3. And if I open this up a little bit, so that button's up at the top, I right click the button and did an inspect. This is how you're going to find how to do the next page on your website. Okay. You can't use Brickset because that's what we're using in the lecture, but you can find any other site. Doesn't really matter. Any other site that allows web scraping. Okay. That allows web scraping. So if I look here, I have a class called next. We can actually do a search here. So if I do a Control F and I look for class equal to next, I don't know if find will go down there. Let me see. We'll find work in the elements section. I don't think so. Do they have a find down here? I was thinking they did. Anybody know if they have a find down here in the elements section? Okay, I'm not sure, but you can look. I'm looking at all these classes here. I don't see any class with next. And if you can do a find, you can try to search for any of the classes called next. I guess what we could do is try to inspect the source. Let's try to do a view page source. And I'll look for class equal to next. Okay, you got to get familiar with the website's structure on this challenge. So you'll see I have two class next. Let's see, you can type Control F and a search bar pops up at the bottom. Let me see, that would be awesome. Command F. I'm all zoomed in. Let me try to zoom out. Let's see, I forgot how I zoomed in down here. Okay, there, I'm zoomed down. Let me try to do a Control F. Yep, there it is. Thank you very much. I don't know why that wasn't popping up either earlier. If I do class equal to next, okay, it's not finding anything, but I did find some on the view page source. I'm not sure how this searches here, but I'm on the view page source, and you'll see I have two class next. Now, if I look at the first one is actually up on the top of the page. So if I look, you'll see I do have a class next, and actually, in fact, it's up here. You'll see it's in the browser links. Then I have a page nation, and I have the page nation up here at the top. Okay, you'll see this is up at the top. And if I look at the next one, scroll all the way down, you'll see all that content there. Content, remember, data is the new gold. So all this content is nice to have. You'll see here I'm on a page nation, but this is at the bottom of the page. Okay, this is at the bottom of the page. This is near the footer. Okay, this is near the footer. So it doesn't really matter which class next you pick. As long as you pick one of the class next, you'll see this class next goes to page 3. If I look at the one up above, this one also goes to page 3. So it doesn't really matter which one you select. So you'll see I'm looking for a class next. In the A tag, I'm looking for the href attribute. And you'll see here I'm using a CSS selector because it's simple. And actually, I'm extracting the first one, which would mean I'm pulling the one off of the top of the page, not at the bottom. And you'll see here, if there's a next page, then I'm going to essentially call back the parse method. You'll see I do a callback with the parse method. Now, what's cool about this is once I get to the end, so if I go back to the site, and let me lower this down a little bit, you'll see once I get to the end, so let's say I go to page 33. Okay, when I go to page 33, this site actually makes it pretty nice because once I get to page 33, if I do a view source, okay, if I do a view source and I look for class equal to next again, you'll see I have a class equal to next, but there's nothing in it. Okay, there's nothing in it. There's a class equal to next, but there's no A tag. If I just go back one page, go back to 32, and then do a view page source, right click, do a view page source, and now I look for class next, you'll see it, I have one here. It's a li tag with an a with a link, a tag with an href. Okay, with an href. But on the last page, yeah, I still have class next, but there's no a tag and there's no href. Okay, there's no href. So that's why I'm checking to see if this is true or not. And then I go ahead and extract the data. Now we can even go a step further. Okay, we can even go a step further and we could even look at the new years. So if I go back to the page, and you'll see here, once I get to the very end, page 33, then I can go to the next year. So if I look at this button here, I'll right click on the button and do an inspect. And you'll see here, I have one called browser links. Okay, I have one called browser links. Let me try to zoom in here a little bit. I have one called browser links. It's a class. Inside that, I have a div. It's the third column. And then I have an A tag with an href going to the next year, which has a link. You'll see it's using a relative link. Okay, and it's going to year 2020. So we can actually write code to pull the next year as well. Okay, we can actually write code to pull the next year as well. So how do we do that? Well, we can go back and look at this code. I have a for loop. It's going to go through all the sets. It's going to go through every set class and go through all of them. It's going to pull the name, pieces, minifigs, image. Then I'm yielding them. I'm creating an object, and I'm basically outputting the object. And then once I go through all the sets, once this for loop is done, I'm going to go to the next page. And then once I'm done going through all the pages, I can then go to the next year. Okay, so it's almost like this runs sequentially. You can think of it running sequentially. This is running sequentially. I'm going to go through all the pages. Once I'm done with all the pages, I'm going to go through all the years. Okay, now the years, I'm actually going to include an else statement here. So if there's a next page, go to the next page. Otherwise, so I'll have an else. We're going to keep writing here. Otherwise, I'm going to go to the next year. Okay, I'm going to go to the next year. Let me put some spaces here. So I can put this at the top. I can zoom in a little bit if that's hard to see. I'm in this else, and we're going to go to the next year. So I'm going to make a next year selector. Okay, here's my next year selector. And you'll notice the names I'm giving them. It's very simple names. I recommend you do the same. And what did I say? So if I come back, I have a class called browser links. Inside browser links, there's a class called column. Inside that, I have an A tag with an href. Okay, and you'll see there's actually quite a few. I have going back, then I have one that's just empty here in the middle, and I have one going forward. Okay, I have one going forward. So how do we know which one we're going to grab? Well, let's first write this down before I forget. We have a class called browser links. And then inside that, we have a class called column. Inside that, we have an A tag. And inside that A tag, we have an href. Okay, so I'm going to look for the attribute with href. I'm going to look for the href attribute on that A tag. Now, first, we're just going to print out all the years. So I'll create a variable called all years. I'll use the response. This is a CSS selector. Okay, so this is my next year selector. And I'm not going to use extract first this time, because if I do extract first, it's actually going to pull the back. You'll see here's the back button. If I want to go back to 2018, I can select the back button. If I want to go forward, it's actually the last one. It's not the first one. So I'm going to call the extract method, not the extract first. And let's just go ahead and print this out. Okay, so I can print this out. I'm going to print out all years. I think Python 3, you have to use parentheses now. Correct me if I'm wrong. And then I'm going to do all years here. And let's just see if we can even get this to print out. Okay, let's just see if we can even get this to print out. So I'm going to have the terminal. Okay, terminal is up above, code's down below. And we need to run this thing. Okay, we need to run this thing. So how do we run it? We got to cd into our directory. So if I do an ls, we're going to cd into professorhorglies.com or your domain. We're in the public HTML directory. I put it here so when you make your challenge, you'll do the same. You'll have a website inside your scraper directory, and the website, they'll have a button. You click the button, it runs the scraper. Scraper puts the data into a database, and then the website grabs the data from the database and outputs it to the display. But we're not there yet. We're about to connect to a database. So we're still not running with the database. So I'll do Scrapy run spider, and then our Python file. Okay, so you see it's grabbing all these pages. We got to let it run for a little bit. Let's see, we're on 2020. It's got to go all the way to page 30 something. We could probably make this quicker by starting on page 29. Let's see, but I didn't do that. So we're just going to let it go to page 30. It's almost there. Boom, page 31, page 32. And then did it output all the years? Did it output all the years? Let's see, I have the last year here, 32. It closed the spider. Okay, it closed the spider. Okay, I'm not printing out all the years. I don't know if I did that print correctly. Can anybody see all the years? I guess you don't have to run it from page 1. You can run it from page 32. You know what? I don't know if 2020 had another year. Let's go back a year. Let's go back a year. So up here at the top, go back to 2019. Go back to 2019 because on 2019, we could go to 2020. So go back to 2019, save the code. So I did 2019 up at the top, and let's see if it'll print out all the years now. And we don't have to go through all of 2019. So let me go back to the web page here. Let me go back to let's see. Here's 2019. So that way we don't run their server too much. I'm going to start from page 32. I'm going to start from page 32. So I'm going to copy this link. And up here at the top, I'll just change this link out. 2019, starting at page 32. Upload it to the server. Let's see if we can get this thing to run. So there's page 32 up at the top if you want to type it. Let me see if this will run. So I ran it. Okay, went to page 32, 33. All years is equal to empty. That's not good. Did I do that right? Did I print this out right? With the parentheses. Okay, all years. Oh, let's see. I put browser links. Yeah, Michelle may have something here. Let me check browser links. What was it? So it should be browse links. Let me try to change that. Let me take this R out. Good eye, Michelle. Let me try to take out this R. Let me try to run it again. So I'm just starting from page 32. Let's see. I got to put the code up on the top. Command line's up at the top. Code's down at the bottom. I took out this R. So now just browse links. Let's try this again. Okay, do we have it? All years. That's what I like to see. 2018, 2020. And then down at the bottom, it selected it again because there's 2. There's two of them. So if I go back to the page, here's 2018 and 2020. If I scroll down, you'll see 2018 and 2020 again. So here's what the code will look like. So it's working. Thank you, Michelle, for saving the day. I'm going to have an if statement here. If the length of all years is greater than 2, which means at least has a back button and at least has one next button. That's the most important thing. It has a back button, it has a next button. I'm going to use a little Pythonic code. If you ever do an interview, they always say, make sure you write Pythonic code. Here comes some Pythonic code. Next year is going to equal all years. Anybody ever see this before? -1. Anybody know what that -1 means in a Python array? Anybody study Python before? -1, last element, that's correct. Trey got it first. Okay, last element, that's good. So as long as it's greater than 2, I know it will either have 2 or it's either going to have 4. How do I know that? Well, it's going to at least have a back year and forward year button at the top. And if I scroll down, it should have a back year and forward year at the bottom. So as long as I have 2, which means at least I have these top 2, I'm going to go ahead and try to go to the next year, because watch this. If I go to 2020 and then 2021, look at that. Now I can only go back to 2020. I can't go forward anymore. So this would be a length of 1. Well, it actually may be a length of 2, but it has to be greater than 2. That's why I put greater than 2. So it still may have 2 if I print it off here, but it's going to be greater than 2. That way I can select the next button. And it's actually going to select the next button down here at the bottom, since I'm selecting the last element. I'm going to select the last element and then make sure it's available. Okay, make sure it's available. So as long as next year is available, we can print it out. We can print it out just to make sure that we have it. Okay, next year is equal to, and I'll do a comma here, next year, the variable. Printing it out is maybe not necessary, but then I'm going to do a yield, just like I did before, and I'm going to say Scrapy.request. And then I could put this all on one line, and I'm put it on multiple just so it's a little bit easier to read. And then just like I did before, response.URL join with next year. Next year is a URL. And I have to have a callback. Make sure you put that comma there. These are parameters to a function. And I'm going to do self.parse. So I'm going to basically call the parse method again. And if there is no year, we can at least output something. And basically, if there's no more years to go, this is the end of the program, basically. Now, this end of program is not really for the user. This is just for us to know that this scraper is finally done. Now, you got to see how I'm doing this here. So kind of get the flow of how a scraper works. What you do is you go to the website, you look at the structure, you look at the content, you look at the structure, you figure out what you want to pull. When you figure out what you want to pull, you got to find it in the structure, how they built the website. So like here, you saw I'm looking for a class called browse links. Then I'm looking for a class called column. Inside of it, see this little space here? This is a CSS selector. So space means it's going to be a child element. Then I have another space inside that's going to be an A tag. And then inside of that, A tag has an attribute with an href. So you got to go to the website, look at the structure of the page, figure out the structure, try to pull, just pull one at a time. Like we did here, we pulled the name first, and then we pulled the image, and then we pulled the pieces, and then we pulled the minifigs. So we just did one at a time, made sure we get that to work, and then all of a sudden, after you start pulling stuff, now you have all the data. Okay, now you have all the data. If I scroll back up here, so we did one at a time, yield them out one at a time. Now I have a bunch of data. And then we went to the next page. We did that one at a time, and then we added to the next year. Okay, so you got to figure out the structure of the website first, and then start pulling data. And then once you start pulling the data, once you get this to work, and then connect it to MongoDB. And after you get it connected to MongoDB, then you generate the output, the website, to click a button and call the scraper. Okay, so just do one step at a time, and then this should work. So let's test this really quick. Okay, so code's up here, command line's up here at the top, code's down here at the bottom. Okay, so now I'm going to start. Let's start from, let's see, we don't want to run too much. So let's start from 2020, and let's start from page 31. So let's see if we can hit the end of the program. Now you can run it from 2019 and let it run the whole way through, but I'm just going to see, we're just doing testing to make sure this works, make sure our next year button works, and to make sure we can get to the end of the year. So 2020, page 31. It's up there at the top if you need the link. We're going to switch it back in a second, so you can just watch mine run. It didn't go very long. Let's see. What do we get? Went from 20. Wait a second. Let me update the server. Make sure you update the server. Run it again. Uh-oh. Let's see. What do we do? Line 51. End of program. Okay, I wrote the print the wrong way. So let's go back down. Let's fix this print. I'm still doing Python 2 prints. Make sure you're doing Python 3 prints. Okay, let's see if this works. I'm just used to Python 2. It's still a habit for me. Let's see, where's that print? Okay, there it is. On line 51. Put your parentheses. Let's try it again. So let's see, where do we go? Page 2020. Uh-oh, we got to go all the way through 2021. Let's see. Not too long, so let's see if I scroll up. We started at 2020, page 31. Then it went to page 32. Then it went to the new year. Look at that. It switched to the new year. It pulled page 1, page 2, and page 3. So it's pulling content, page 4, page 5, page 6 on 2021. So it did go to the new year. And then you'll see here, it printed out all the years. Did it print out end of program? That's weird. It did not print out end of program. Unless you see it, I don't see it. Did I update my server? Okay, I updated my server. Oh, let's see. I guess this else. Let's see. This else should probably go out on this if here. Well, we can have two else here if there's not a next year. And you can even do it here. You can even bring it out. But probably you only need that one else. You can probably just bring that else out one tab. I'm going to put two there. Probably don't need this one. You probably don't need this one. And let's see if this works here. The else actually isn't really necessary. That's just for us. Just for us. So if it's not working, you can even just take it out. That else was just for us anyway. Let's see, did it work? Okay, now I'm all jacked up on my tabs. Okay, let's see, I'm all jacked up. This is one reason I don't like Python. Although Python is awesome for a lot of other reasons. Let's try this. Maybe those comments messed it up. I can't tell if those are even. Looks like they're even. Let's give it a try. I do have a space there. Let me take that space out. That could be causing problems as well. Okay, so I kind of cleaned up the code. Let's see if this will run. If it doesn't run, I'm taking that else out. That's not very useful anyway. Okay, it's running. Do we see an end of program? Okay, here's the end of program. So it's working now. So you see it did hit this else. Okay, so I just tabbed it out a little bit. And that's it. Okay, that's the whole scraper. Now, this years is kind of a bonus, I would say. Really, all you need is to go through the pages. This is the minimum requirement to go at least, you got to at least go to multiple pages on one website. But if you go to multiple pages and multiple years and you have a bunch of data, it is a way to get bonus points. The more data you're able to scrape, the more pages you're able to search, then bonus points are optional there. So let's say you went to multiple pages on one site and then you searched another site and went to multiple pages on it as well. Definitely some bonus points there. Okay, any questions with this? Any questions with this? We're going to connect it to MongoDB. Okay, is it working? Is anybody getting this to work, or is it not working? Is anybody here today? Not working for you? That's not good, Adrian. What's going on? You getting some bugs? Let's see, indentation error. I got that too. It's probably on this else. Go ahead and just take this else statement out. It's not very important. Just take that else statement out. Let's see, you think it's an error with Scrapy itself. When you run Scrapy, run Spider, does it say Scrapy is unknown? Does it say Scrapy is unknown? Okay, we had some issues with this last class. I remember we tried to do pip install Scrapy. That didn't work. We had to go to pip 3. So some of these commands on the Canvas page actually need to be updated. Let's see. Even on this one, we did a pip install PyMongo. We probably need to change it to pip 3. But if I go back to lecture 21, let's see. These commands are actually old. No, it looks like I did put pip 3. Maybe I did change it, but actually these commands are no good. You should go to this link here. Let me remove these commands actually. I hope you didn't run those commands, but if you did, that's okay. You can always come back and just go to this documentation here. This is the best way to install it. We're on Ubuntu 16, but it's the same. So sudo apt-get python 3 pip. And then I don't know why they put this here, pip install Scrapy. They even have it here. This should be pip 3 install Scrapy. Okay, that could be one of the errors, Adrian. I'm not entirely sure. I'll have to look at it, but definitely this should say pip 3 install Scrapy. We had problems with that last class. What you can do is at least get the code down. Okay, you got some headers. Let's see. I think pip install Scrapy is just if you're using a virtual environment. I see. Yeah, it did tell us to use a virtual environment, and we did not. So that could be. Okay, let's get this thing to connect with MongoDB. Let's get this thing to connect with MongoDB. Now, this is how I recommend you to do your challenge as well. Don't start out trying to connect to MongoDB. You're going to have too many pieces and it's going to break. First, just build a Python script just like we did and do a run spider just like we did. Get the scraper to work. That's step 1. Then step 2 is use Scrapy CLI, which is the command line interface, which is what we're going to do today. So I'm going to back out of brick set scraper. That's just our test scraper. We don't want to worry about the structure of Scrapy. We don't want to worry about MongoDB. We just want to get the scraper to work. You got to go to the website, look at the content, look at the structure, and then figure out what selectors you want to use, just like we did here. Okay, just like we did here. This is the most important part right here. This is the meat of the program. By selecting the elements and then yielding them. Going to a next page is a required part, But going to the next year, you'll see a lot of code here. This is just some bonus work. This is the meat. You got to have the data, and you got to at least go to a few pages. Okay, you have to write code that goes to another page. Now, if you just put a few pages up here, that's not going to count. You can't manually set them. You need to write the scraper to go to them, just like a user would click on the link or click on the button, which is what we're doing here. Now, if I come back to the command line, we need to use Scrapy CLI. And this is what you're going to have to do for the challenge. So first, write the scraper, then build a Scrapy program that connects to MongoDB. So I'm in public.html. I'm going to do an ls. I'm going to do Scrapy. And I'm actually using the commands on lecture 22. It says pip install pymongo. We're going to do that here in a second. First things first, let's start a Scrapy project. So I'll do Scrapy start project. This is Scrapy CLI, and we're going to call it brickset. One we call it brickset scraper. Maybe we can call this one brickset. Brickset, maybe pymongo. Let's see, brickset. Maybe we'll call it brickset. Well, let's just call it brickset. Let's follow the tutorial. So Scrapy start project brickset. And once I do this, this is Scrapy CLI. So you'll want to search the web. You don't need to know much. You just need to know how to start a project and how to run a project. So if I do Scrapy CLI, you'll see Scrapy has a command line tool. And there's not very many commands to run. You either run start project or you run the scraper. So you'll see start project, cd into the directory, generate a spider, and then you can run the project. So here's the global commands. Here's the project only commands. So there's only a few commands. You don't need to know all of them. Okay, you don't need to know all of them. So what does it say after I start the project? So I did Scrapy start project brickset in my public HTML directory. It says cd into brickset and then generate a spider. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to cd into brickset, and I'm going to do Scrapy generate spider. Example, we're going to call it example. We're going to say example.com, just like they told us. Click enter. You'll see it created a spider called example using the template basic in module. So it's in the spiders module with the module name. Now I can go into this. So if I do a cd or do an ls, you'll see I have two things. I have a directory called brickset, and I have my Scrapy configuration file. If I cd into brickset, do an ls, you'll see I have spiders, I have settings, I have pipelines, middlewares, items. Now I actually recommend, once you generate the spider, so I generated the project and then I generated the spider, I actually now recommend you go through FileZilla or you go through VS Code. I'm not sure if anybody got VS Code to work, but if you did, you could use VS Code. If you didn't, you could use others. I forgot what the other student was using. It was actually kind of a pretty good IDE. I think it was called WebStorm. Anybody heard of WebStorm? WebStorm student was showing me, was actually pretty cool. Had a lot of features just like VS Code. I'm just going to stick to FileZilla for now. So I generated the project, generated the spider. I'm going to come over here to FileZilla, connect to your server, go to Site Manager, double click on your server, go into your ProfessorWorglies.com, public HTML, and then I'm in the brickset directory. Okay, I'm in the brickset directory. Now you'll see I have a brickset directory and a Scrapy configuration file. I'll tell you what, I'm getting so many calls today from all over the place. Rhode Island, Washington, D.C., Michigan. I don't want calls about the election. Sorry for the interruption. Let's go to Scrapy configuration. So if I right click, do a view and edit, here's what I have. So you'll see this is automatically created by Scrapy start project. All it does is say where the settings file is, and it also tells you what the project is. Now you'll see I can deploy this on a URL, port 6800. But I don't recommend you do this. I recommend you have Scrapy here in the background. And then if you ever want to run Scrapy from the website or from the server, you run the same commands that we're doing here. Okay, so I'm not going to mess with the configuration file. Go into the brickset directory. And we're going to go into spiders. Okay, we're going into spiders. And then we're going to go here into example pi. So open it up. Now this has a little bit more structure than ours, but you'll see it's essentially the same. So we had our, what do we call it? Let me go back. In our brickset scraper, we have one called scraper.py. So if I look at scraper.py, here's the scraper we just built. If I scroll up, you'll see it has a class called brickset spider. I'm importing Scrapy spider, and I have to have at least two things, the name and the start URLs. You'll see I also import Scrapy up at the top. So I come back to the new code, example.py, I'm importing Scrapy. I have a class. I'm importing a spider. I have the name and the start URLs and the parse method. Now this has allowed domains as well, but this parameter is optional. Okay, this parameter is optional. So what I'm going to do, I actually want to keep this example simple. What you can do is you can go back and copy your scraper.py if you want to copy the code we just wrote. Or I have some of the code there on Canvas. So if you go back to lecture 22, you'll see I also have a small example of the scraper we just built. It has a little bit less code, but that's okay. We actually want to keep it simple on this lecture. We just want to focus on putting the data into MongoDB. So I'm going to literally erase the content here and paste it. It doesn't really matter what the class name is, although it probably would be a good idea to match. Okay, it probably would be a good idea to match. You'll see when I generated it, I called it example, and then I said example.com. So when you generate your spider for your challenge, and we could generate another one. Let's just see if I generate another one. Let's say I call this one brickset. And I went to, and I don't know what the URL is. We'd have to look it up. Let's just say I do brickset.com. Oh, cannot create a spider with the same name as your project. That's a good thing to note here. We need to change the name of the spider. So if I come back to here, if I do a paste, what do we call this? We called it brickset spider, so that should work. We called it brickset spider. Now, I'm copying all this code here that we had, except I'm going to take all this code out for now. We don't need any of this. I'm going to take all this out. All I'm going to have is just going through one page and basically outputting in. We can put the year back, start from 2020, page 1. We called it brickset spider. We had the user agent, which is what we saw as a requirement. We need that. I believe in the Canvas code, it does not have this user agent. So let me go ahead and paste that for you. So let me take this. Let me uncomment it. Let me update that Canvas page so you have exactly what I have. Okay, if you use this code, it would have worked. You just had to add that one line up at the top. But here comes some of the code. So here it is. Uh-oh, that looks ugly. Maybe go ahead and copy that code that's already in there because it's all tabbed out for you. It'll take me a while to tab all this out. So just copy this code here. And then here, let me add this one line of code for you that you can add there at the top. It's called user agent. Let me add this one here at the top. So user agent, this goes, oh, maybe I can put that in there. Let's see, user agent goes right here. And I can't do tabs. I did spaces there. I don't know if that'll break your program. I actually don't like that. I'm going to undo that. I'll just put it up here and you put it in your program. You got to tab it out. I know Python's really picky if you copy and paste, so be careful. So there's the user agent text that you have to have, and it goes right underneath start URLs. So if you refresh lecture 22, and if you did copy it from here, you can have the string here. If you're using your challenge, the code we just wrote for the lecture, then you already have it. And then you already have it. So we're not going to go to next pages at the beginning. Let's just focus on getting the data into the database. So this is what I have right here. Import from Scrapy. You have to have a class. The class has to import from Scrapy Spider. You have to have two fields. You have to have the name of the spider and the start URLs. And in addition, we ran it and we got an error, so we had to put this line. Then you have to have the parse method, which takes two parameters, self and response. Response is going to be the HTML page that you crawled. Okay, well, there's two keywords, crawled and scraped. We're crawling this site, and then we're scraping the contents here. So that's usually why they use the keyword spider. Okay, spider will crawl and scrape. Okay, but you could do one or the other. You don't always have to scrape. You can just crawl and index. And we can see if this works. Okay, we can see if this works. I actually got an error earlier. I don't know if this Brickset website just set this recently, but you can see when you're running an actual Scrapy project. So this is a project now. Earlier, we created a Python file that imports Scrapy. So we kind of imported Scrapy manually. What we did now is we have actually created a Scrapy project. It's similar to like Ionic. With Ionic, I can import Ionic, or I can create an Ionic project. And that's what's happening here. I'm actually creating a Scrapy project. So when I'm creating a Scrapy project, you're going to run the crawl command instead of the run spider command like we did before. So let's see if we can crawl Brickset, and it's not just Brickset, it's called Brickset Spider. Let's see, spider not found, Brickset Spider. Let me upload the server. Make sure you update the server. Try it again, Scrapy crawl Brickset Spider. Okay, we got some action here. But I'm surprised to see this here. I'm surprised to see this, forbidden by robots.txt. Now, if you see this here, and actually it's probably good that we're going over this, because if you see this, forbidden by robots.txt, the website actually has a txt file, and you can search for it. Okay, you can search for it. If you got that earlier, that makes sense. I didn't know that that was happening. I don't know why it's not happening on my others. Let's see, where's that robots.txt? It's got to be around here somewhere. But if you see that, you can actually search this error. You can actually search this error. So I search debug forbidden by robots.txt, and if I go over here and I search Scrapy, and then that error, you'll see here's a good article back from 2016, so kind of old, but how to crawl the web politely with Scrapy. First rule of web crawling is you do not harm the website. This is a good article to read about ethics, because there's a lot of ethical issues with scraping. There's a lot of bad stuff that you can do. First rule is to make sure you don't harm the website. Second rule of web crawling is you do not harm the website. Okay, that's pretty funny. We're supporters of the blah, blah, blah of web data, but not at the expense of the website's owner. I agree with this. Let's see. How do you make it polite? Okay, how do you make it polite? They talk about it. You'll see here this robots text obey equal to true. Okay, this robots text equal to true. What this is saying is if they have a robots txt file, you're going to go ahead and obey it and not scrape the site. I don't know when this website put this up, because I've been using this website for years and they've never had a problem with us scraping it. They must have put this up recently. Let me search for it over here, robots.txt. I don't see it here, but essentially it's a text file. And if the scraper detects this text file, It's going to open it up and it sees what the settings are. If the settings tell you not to scrape, the robot will obey it and it will not scrape the site. Because you got to imagine, what are we doing to this server? Every time I scrape it, I'm making a GET request to it. And if you've ever started an AWS server, you know you have to pay per request. So every time somebody requests my site, you have to pay for that. So eventually these people saw all these requests coming, let's say from Mizzou. Usually I have 100 plus students and we're all making requests at the same time. You know, we're all pulling the site and we go with many pages through many years. And some students decide to scrape the whole site. Well, that's a lot of requests. Every page that's being uploaded is a new request. Every page that's being downloaded by the scraper is a new request, and that will cost a lot of money. So I don't know when they put that on there, but they put that on there. We got to use it for an example. So we're going to use it for just for class examples. But if you see this when you're scraping the web, try to respect it, which means that website doesn't want you to scrape their web page. Okay, if I had enough time, I would have picked a new web page. I didn't know. I mean, we scraped it last class, so I don't know if they put this up within the last day or two, or maybe end of last week. I've never seen this before from this website, so they must have just put it up. I didn't have enough time to use a new example, but definitely if you see this, try to respect it. Okay, they're telling you, please don't crawl my page. You're costing me too much money, or you're overloading our server. Sometimes you'll overload the server, you'll crash the server. So you got to be respectful. Okay, you got to be respectful. So if I come back inside the brick set, you'll see settings. Okay, you'll see settings. If I open up settings, if you right click and view and edit settings, we're just going to do this for testing purposes. So I'm going to switch this to false. If I switch this to false, then it will still scrape the page. So you see the robot's text and you're saying you're not going to obey their policy. You're not going to obey their policy. So if I run this, okay, they must have just put that up within a few days. So if I crawl again, okay, you'll see I'm getting some information now. So now I'm pulling data, which is really weird because our other scraper was pulling data. No problem. I just ran the scraper today. But when I run the Scrapy project, it has this in the settings file, and this settings file tells it to obey robots txt file. So maybe that's the issue. Maybe the other Scrapy that we did manually ourselves doesn't have the rules here, but this Scrapy project does. So if I put this to false and I just run this for loop here, it should work. Okay, it should work. And let's see if I get rid of this user agent. In the other scraper, it didn't work. If I get rid of the user agent here, does it still work? Let's give it a try. Okay, let's see. It didn't work. So you got to have that user agent. I get this HTTP status codes is not handled. Then you get a 403. Okay, and what that's doing, and maybe that should have been a key to me. We didn't need this. The last time I taught this course, we didn't need this. And what this is saying is it tells the browser what agent you are, what server you're like, what browser you're using. You'll see it's Mozilla or Apple WebKit, which is Safari or Chrome. So it's literally telling the server what type of browser we're using. We didn't need this before. So they must have put rules on this website that says only allow the page to load if it's coming from a browser. Because this example that we're using was on DigitalOcean, and I gave you guys the link. So if I look up DigitalOcean, okay, you got to reference your work. So I'm using DigitalOcean Scrapy. You'll see this pops up, and this is the web page that you're using. So pip install Scrapy. You'll see they're using the brickset.com. This is back from 2016. So maybe DigitalOcean came out with this tutorial, and then this Brickset website was getting overloaded. So then they put that robots.txt, and they must have done it this semester because I ran it last semester without any issues. So they must have done it recently. But we're just using this as an example. Okay, we're just using this as an example, and we will respect their rule. We're not going to scrape this project, but just for research purposes. So we got to keep going because I want to connect to Mongo. If I want to connect to Mongo, so I'm pulling data, the first step is go over here to items.py. So I'm in Brickset directory, go to items.py, and I need to tell it what data I'm pulling. So you'll see here, define here the models. Remember MVC, model view controller? Define here the models for your scraped items. See the documentation. I like how they put a link there. And they even give you an example. Look at this beautiful example. What's funny is we're going to use that example. So I'm going to comment out their pass, which just means don't do anything. I'm going to say name equals scrapy.field. What else do we pull? We pulled pieces. So I'll say pieces equals the Scrapy field. We didn't have to do this before, but we have to do it now if we want it to go into MongoDB. We had images, so we'll say image equals the Scrapy field. So you basically just create your object here. This is a class, and we're creating the fields. We are in fields. We are in items.py. We're in items.py. Okay, go into Brickset. Go into the Brickset directory, and then go into items.py. And I think we had one more. What else do we have? We had name, pieces, image, and minifigs. So let me put minifigs there as well. So I'll put minifigs, which is also a scrapy.field. Now, the order doesn't really matter here because you have key value pairs. So I have the key and then the value. So as long as I have the key and the value, as long as the keys, these keys are case sensitive. So make sure they're case sensitive in your program. If you misspell them, it will not work. These keys have to match the keys here in the scraper. Okay, they have to match. So here's the 4 fields. Okay, first you got to create the fields. Okay, first create the fields. Okay, what else do we do? Then we got to go into the settings again. Okay, so we created the fields. Let's come back over here to the settings. Go to settings.py. You'll see I put obey false. If I keep scrolling down, you'll see one called item pipelines. Okay, you'll see configure item pipelines. You'll see the default is Brickset pipelines, Brickset pipelines 300. What's funny is if I go to items here, oh wait, we're not to pipelines yet, but we will. I'll show you where this pipelines is. We're going to create our own pipeline. So copy the same thing called item pipelines. You can literally copy it to make sure you spell it correctly. And then we're going to do Brickset just like they did. Brickset pipelines. So this is going into the Brickset directory, then going into the pipelines file, and then looking for Brickset pipeline. So we're going to do the same thing. Instead, we're going to make our own pipeline. We're going to call it our MongoDB pipeline. So we're configuring a little bit of settings here. Do the 300 just like they did. And they have a comma there. See that comma? I only have one element here, so it's probably not required, but I'm going to go ahead and put that comma there because they have it here as well in the example. And you could do it on a new line if you think that looks better. You can do it just like they did. So let's see, they had this on a new line, and then they had this there. So you can do it just like theirs. But we need a few more things. We need to specify the MongoDB. So that we're going to specify the MongoDB server. These are variables. These are variables. The MongoDB server is on the local host. You should have MongoDB already installed since we went over that in the lecture. Then we have MongoDB port. So we're just going to set a few variables here. What's the MongoDB port? It's 27017. And then I have the MongoDB database, the MongoDB DB, and we're going to call it brickset. And then we're going to have our collection. So I'll do MongoDB, last one, collection. Now, what this reminds me of is if you took 2830, you remember how we connect to MySQL? Okay, this is in our settings.py. With MySQL, we had a configuration file where we specify the server, the port, the database, the username, and password. This is kind of like our MySQL configuration file, except here it's going to be in our settings.py, and it's for Python. We're going to connect using something called PyMongo. If you use Node and MongoDB, you probably use something called, and I keep forgetting the name this semester. What was that tool you guys use for Node.js and MongoDB? I remember one was called MongoJS. I think it was called MongoJS. And another one was called Mongoose. But for Python, it's called PyMongo. Okay, it's called PyMongo. We need these parameters. We need these parameters set. Okay, that's going to be in our settings. Let's keep moving. The lecture's almost over. If I can come back to this code if you didn't get it all. Let's see. I'm going to upload those. I need to go into pipelines. So you'll see it says brickset, pipelines, MongoDB pipeline. So I come back over here. We're in our brickset project in the brickset directory into pipeline. So open up pipelines.python. And then we don't have it yet, but we're going to create a class called MongoDB Pipeline. Well, this code is pretty long. Okay, this code is pretty long, so I actually have it up on Canvas. Let's see. I don't think I have the most updated one. So I got to update Canvas. I don't know if it will have the tabs, so we'll have to tab it out. Let's see if I copy this, if it'll make the tabs for us. So let me put this on Canvas. I don't think Canvas has the right one. Let me delete this one right here. Actually, I'm going to leave it. It's going to be the one right below it. And of course, it's not tabbed out. So we're going to have to tab it out together. Okay, so if you scroll down, refresh lecture 22. And if you scroll down, we're going to copy this code right here. This is the new code. This is the old way how to do it. And this is the new way how to do it. Okay, this is the new way. So we're going to copy this code. You'll see it's called MongoDB Pipeline. And if I put it in my pipelines file, as long as the class name matches the name in the settings, it will work. But we got to tab this out. So take a little bit of time, tab it out. What I like to do is do backspace, so there's no extra spaces there. Bring it to the same line, and then I do an enter. So I do a backspace here, bring it to the same line, enter. Here's a class method. Anybody remember class methods from object-oriented programming? Class methods in Java were called static methods. Okay, so I do a backspace, tab this out. I'm not sure if this is a static method in Python. You'll have to correct me if I'm wrong there. But static methods in Java were, class methods in Java were static. Okay, so tab this out. And this is the correct pipeline code. And we can go over it. We'll probably have to go over it next time. It's kind of long. But all it does is it connects. Let's see, I have a collection name here, so I may not even need that in the settings. I have my collection name. And then I have a constructor here. The constructor takes the Mongo URI, and MongoDB. Okay, and actually we need to modify this a little bit. Let's see. Mongo URI is right here. So we're going to the crawler settings. And in the crawler settings, we're getting MongoDB server. That's something that we set. And we need the database. So we're grabbing MongoDB. We did that. And you'll see we're opening the spider. So we're opening PyMongo. And we're going to connect to the MongoDB client. And then we're going to close the spider. And we're going to process each item. So it's going to open the spider, process each item. And you'll see, what does it do? It goes to the database, adds the collection, and we call the insert method. Remember in Mongo, we call the insert method? We're inserting a dictionary. In Python, you have dictionaries. They're basically like hash maps in Java. We have a dictionary. So we're going to insert the Python dictionary, which is key value pairs. And that's what MongoDB requires. This is like a JSON object with each item. Item is going to be in our item py. So whatever's the key value pairs there, we're going to add it. You'll see I do a log, and I return the item. Okay, so this is just connecting to the database, grabbing the settings, setting the collection name, opening the spider, running the spider, inserting each data, and then closing the spider. You got to have these methods defined, otherwise it won't work. Okay, otherwise it won't work. Okay, so copy that from Canvas. Go ahead and tab it out. Okay, go ahead and tab it out. I think we're pretty much done here. We still need to fix up the code just slightly. So we got it to print. There's just one more thing and this code will work. The last thing is changing up the spider. So go back to example.py. We got 2 minutes left. This was in pipelines. I'm going back to example.py. And we're not going to just print it out anymore. We need to actually create the object. So how do I create the object? Well, I'm going to say item. Each item is going to equal to we're going to call it items.brickset item. This is our class. Brickset item was our class. So we're going to create basically a brickset item, and then our item's name. Our item's name is going to be equal to this CSS selector. So I'm going to copy it. Okay, item pieces is going to be equal to, so we're creating basically our JSON. We're creating our JSON. This is going to go into MongoDB. We have to make it as a brickset item. If we just yield it, it's not going to connect to MongoDB. We got to create a brickset item, and I'm going to switch back to the pipelines. You can stay here. You'll see it's going to take the item and insert that into MongoDB. So it's got to be an item, a brickset item, which is what we're creating here. So we got just a few left. Pieces, minifigs. And I'm just writing that and then copying this selector here because we know it works. We got that to work. And then we're going to do image. Now, if you copied the code from Canvas and it only has the 3, that's fine. Just go ahead and do the 3. Just copy the code that you have and put it right here and create an item. Okay, this should be image, not item. And then instead of yielding your customly built object, you're going to yield the brickset item. Okay, you're going to now yield the brickset item. Now it's not going to know what item is. So we also have to add the import for it. Now, it used to be really simple to add this import, but now it kind of looks funny. If you're a Python developer, you probably understand it better than I do. Usually you would say brickset item, which is the class, from, and we actually call it brickset item like the class. But for some reason, this import wasn't working. We had to change it to this. From, go back a directory, import item with an S. And this should have an S up here too. This should have an S up here too. So for some reason, we had to do a relative import instead of like this. Okay, this would start from the root directory brick set and then go into items. This goes back a directory and looks for items. Okay, either way, this one finally works. I believe we can try to test it. Let's see, we're out of time. Let me try to run this. I think the last thing we needed to do was to download PyMongo. Okay, we had to download PyMongo. Let me upload my code. Let me crawl it real quick. Let's see if it works. Let's see, we forgot PyMongo. You got to download PyMongo. That was the first thing in Canvas there. I scroll back up. You got to do a pip install PyMongo. Probably changes to pip 3. But let's see, we're out of time. And let me get the attendance before you leave. Okay, put your name and pop it in on the chat. Let me get you for the attendance. I'm probably going to keep going here. I want to get this recorded. We're like 2 steps away from getting this done. Put your name and pop it in on the chat. I'm going to probably keep recording. If you got to go, that's fine. But make sure you put your name and pop it in on the chat before you leave. We're almost done. We're almost done. We got 1 challenge left, final project, and just a few explorations left. We're almost done for this semester, so hang in there. Finish strong. We're almost done. This is our last challenge. I'm excited about that. This is our last challenge, and it's a fun challenge, so get it done. Then we got our final project. I believe this end of this week, maybe into the weekend, we need to pick our final project groups. So I posted that in an announcement. Start thinking about what you want to do for the final project, and just start thinking about who you'd like to be on a team with. You don't need to finalize it right now. You don't need to finalize your idea right now. Just kind of think about what you want to work on, what are your skills that you could bring to a team, and what would be a good team. So if you like front end, you should find somebody who's good with back end. If you like back end, you should find somebody who's good with front end. If you have a team and you're all back end developers, that would be a horrible situation because nobody would do the front end. You got to have both. You got to have good front end, good back end. You got to be able to connect to a database. But try to find a good, robust team, a good team, a well-rounded team that likes different areas of web development. If you're all front-end developers, that wouldn't be good. If you're all back-end developers, that wouldn't be good. So make sure you have a good mix. Okay, we're not there yet, so you don't have to worry about the final project. Just kind of start thinking about it. That's it. Put your name and pop it on the chat. I'm going to keep going here. Let's see if we can get this to work. If you have to leave, feel free to leave. And we'll see you guys on Thursday. Make sure you're working on the challenge. Right now, you should start writing the scraper. You have enough knowledge to write the scraper. Then connect to MongoDB, and then build the front end for it. Right now, be focusing on the scraper. You have enough knowledge to at least build the scraper. Okay, I'm going to keep going here. If you need to leave, that's fine. I'm just going to record just a few more minutes. Okay, so let me try this pip install PyMongo. Okay, let me try this pip install PyMongo, and let's try to run it again. Okay, let's see. We're still getting this error here. Let me try a pip 3. Let me try a pip 3 install PyMongo, and I may need to exit out of the terminal. Okay, let's see. That actually installed something. Let me try to run this again. Let's see. We're getting some errors here. Let's see. Line 83, 89 in crawler.py. PyMongo is not defined. Let's see, line 89. I don't think I did anything in 89. Let's see, did we import PyMongo? Let me see, let me go back to pipelines. Actually, I forgot something here. We forgot to import PyMongo here in the pipeline. Okay, so if I go back to pipelines, we need a few imports here. Let's see, it could be before or after this, doesn't really matter. Okay, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to put it up here before. So first thing we need to do is import PyMongo. Make sure you import PyMongo. And then from Scrapy exceptions, we're going to import drop item. We're also going to import logging. Okay, we're going to import logging. You'll see that here. You'll see I have the MongoDB client using PyMongo. So we have to import PyMongo. You'll see I have exceptions here as well. Okay, you'll see I have exceptions here as well, and I have logging. Here's my logging down here at the bottom. So I have to import logging. I need to also import exceptions, okay, for the drop item. Okay, I'm going to update the code. I see some questions there. I'm going to go over them here in a second. Let me finish this really quick, and then we can go over some questions. Let me see if this will run. Okay, so I added the imports up at the top. Make sure you upload FileZilla. And let me run this code one more time. Let's see if it works. Looks like it's working this time. Look at this. It's working. And look at this. It's going into MongoDB. That's what we like to see. So that's the connection right there. And look how easy it is. I didn't have to write hardly any code. That's why I like Scrapy. What do we write? Maybe 50 lines of code, maybe 80 lines of code. Okay, it's yielding the objects and it's posting it into MongoDB. So what you can do here is you can go into the MongoDB shell and you can do show DBs. You'll see I have my brick set, so I'm going to use brick set. This is exciting. And then I'm going to do brick set. So I'll do db.table. So we're going to be in our sets. And we can just do a find, which is a select all. Look at this. It's in the database. Okay, it's in the database. So let me open this up. What do we got in the database? So in the database, in our DB brick set, I did a select all. You'll see I have the MongoDB ID, the name, which is bookshop, pieces, which is 2504, minifigs, which is this, image, which is this. And what I like is on these images, you can actually display the output on the web. So you can imagine here, if I come to my, let me come to my whiteboard really quick. Let me clear this up. So imagine I have a page, and let's say I was doing brick set. I would probably have a text input. They can import the year. So let's say I do 2020, and then I hit go. This is going to be my go button, or I can do my scrape. So I can say scrape. This is my scrape button. Okay, scrape. And then I'm going to have a table here. Let's say I had a table. It's going to be empty, but when I click scrape, so I click scrape, it's going to put maybe the ID. I can put the MongoDB ID. Then I can put the name. Then I can put the, what do we have? Minifigs. I can put the pieces. And what I could do for image is, since I have the URL, I can literally have an image here. I could display the images here. And now for my pieces, it was 2405 or 2504. I can't remember what it was. And then I had my minifigs, and then the name was books or book set. And then my ID is 1234, whatever. And this could go on, and I could just have a bunch of records here. And I could fill in the table, and I can show the images here. So that's the idea. Or I could put 2019. If I put 2019 and hit scrape, it would show this 2019 data. It would show the 2019 data. So this is what the website will look like. So if I come back to MongoDB, it's here. I don't want to show any more, so I can do a quit. Okay, so I can do a quit. If I do a quit, it'll exit out. And that's essentially it. So in the scraper, it's called example.py. We just used a little bit. I could then now go and add my next page selector as well as my next year selector. It's going to select all of it. It's going to yield an item. If I go back to settings, we link the pipeline and link the corresponding attributes. In items, we created our brick set item. We could add more. These keys have to be the same as the ones in the scraper right here. Make sure these keys are the same. If they're not, it won't work. So we created our items here, and then back in pipelines, we had to do imports. So we imported this. We created our pipeline, and basically we connect to the database. We open up the spider using Mongo client. We open up the spider. We're going to do a parse. We process each item. We insert that into the database, and then we close the spider. And you can see that here in the command line. So I come back up. We're processing each item, put it in the database. When we get to the end, we close the spider, and we dump the results. So this is it. We only wrote a few lines of code, and that's why I like Scrapy. We have 20 lines of code here. We wrote 5 lines of code here, 5 lines of code here, so about 30 lines. Plus, this is kind of long, but you just copy it from the lecture. You don't have to change this. In fact, you don't have to change this at all. You don't change any of this. The only part that you change are the key value pairs here, and you change the setting. What do you want the database to be? What do you want the collection to be? Those are the only things you need to change, and then you need to write your scraper. So if you use Scrapy, you don't need to change much. You figure out what website you want to crawl, you generate the selectors, and then you change the key value pairs here. And that's all you need to change. You don't need to write a big program. A lot of the code for the challenge is you take this code and go find a website to scrape. Okay, you don't have to build it from scratch. Do a Scrapy start project, take the code I showed you here, go and scrape from a website, and this code right here already puts it into MongoDB. So then you build the front end. Okay, but step 1 is just to build the Scrapy like we did before. Don't even use the Scrapy CLI. Just create a Python file and make sure the scraper works. Then generate a project. This is step 2. Generate a project with Scrapy. Connect it to MongoDB. Step 3, generate the front end where you click a button and it runs the scraper. Now I put some links there just real quick. I'm about to end this here. If I look up PHP run Python script. Okay, here's a good one from Tutorials Point. Look how easy this is. This is a shell command. So I can literally run whatever shell command I want, and it's going to execute. So if I do this, so if you look, we were running, what did we run? We run Scrapy crawl brick set spider. So in this Python script, I could change this with Scrapy run brick set spider. Now, you'd have to CD into that directory. So you'll see it has to go into that directory. But once you're in this directory, then you can run this command here like we do in the lecture. So essentially, you execute the shell command. You'll see it executes here. And then if the shell returns something, which this one does not, you could also output it to the page here. So look how easy to build a website would be. You execute the Python script. Let's say the Python script returns the output, which is how we had it at the beginning. When I did a yield here, this would return it to this variable output here. And then I can have a for loop. I loop through the output. I put it into a table. I put it into a table format. Don't just output a string and have it just as a big, massive string. You got to have some formatting there. Make a table. Make it look at least halfway decent. And you can generate the web page like I told you. Click a button and run this command. You can almost do that with 10 lines of code. So it's not hard to generate that web page. If you want to do it with Node, Node's also easy. If you just search run Python script with Node, okay, run Python script with Node, it's just as easy. It's just as easy. So here, it even shows you how to take in arguments. So let's say you wanted to have an argument as the year. They pass the year over, and you pass in an argument. It would also be easy. They even have the server code. Look at this. They even have the server code for you. And here it is right here. So you could do a spawn Python with the Python file, and then you can actually pass in parameters there. You can actually pass in parameters as well. Okay, so they even have the server code for you. The PHP script, you'd have to write the AJAX request. Here it has the server code for you already. So this is also very useful. You may take a look at Node. Just a few lines of code and you can run that Python script. Adrian, I have posted all these links. They're in the challenge requirements page. I have all these links here, and I will post the videos here soon as well. Let's see. That's it. That's all I wanted to talk about. Okay, that's all I wanted to talk about. I'm going to end this recording. So I'll stay here for a few minutes if you have any questions. I'll go back over the questions in the chat if people are still here. That's all for this lecture. I'll be here for a few minutes if you have any questions. Otherwise, we'll see you on Thursday.